Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Baseball Adjacent. I am your host, Taco Josh, and I am here with America's pitching coach. It is Justin Arth wearing the merch, wearing his own hat, which is pretty legendary.
Always advertising, right?
Always advertising is definitely the way to go.
Head over to a11performance.com if you want pitching training and all that other good stuff. But let's talk baseball.
Yeah, let's jump into it. So we today a little bit different. If you guys watch the podcast, today we're doing a tier list of teams and what they're looking at, their odds of making the playoffs, I guess, is what we're doing today. We are a month-ish, maybe 4 weeks pre-All-Star break, maybe a little less than that at this point. So we'll likely do this again after that. So just know if trades happen after this, obviously we don't know that at this point. So we're kind of just going with where they are right now and maybe project a few things, but mostly like baseline where they are right now. Our tiers that we're going to stick them in, we have World Series contenders. That's for like the top teams. The playoff outs, that's the teams that we're pretty sure are making the playoffs, but we're also pretty sure they're probably not actual World Series contenders when push comes to shove. And they're probably not thrilled to just make the playoffs. So that's kind of where those guys are going. Playoff bound with an exclamation point is going to be the teams that are pumped to just make it in the dance. And then playoff bound question mark are the teams that would be pumped to make it in the dance, but we're not sure if they're going to. And then there's always next year and then sell the team. And I feel like those two are pretty self-explanatory. And we're going to talk about hopefully every team at least a little bit, or we're at least going to mention every team, which I know does not happen in every episode. So that's a win. And then hit that subscribe button because I'm a good YouTuber and all of our socials are in the description. So, Justin, I think we start with World Series contenders. I think there's like a few, probably.
Yeah, there are a few, which is good for baseball. Because it's typically maybe one or two, and I think we've got three.
Yeah, I would agree. I think so. The layup one, the slam dunk one, is the Dodgers. I think
Absolutely.
everybody, when it comes down to it, and everybody's healthy, that's one of the things we'll project. They can't get more injured than they currently are on the pitching staff. I would hope. I guess you never know for sure. Uh, but they're a World Series contender. The lineup is deep. The pitching is deep. Even with all the injuries, even right now as they stand, I would say they're one of the best teams in
Oh,
baseball.
absolutely. I mean, when the team is able to bench Freddie Freeman for going on like a 3 or 4 day cold streak, that team is a World Series contender. They're like insane. And yeah, it can always get worse. Pitchers can always fall off the face of the earth. But they've got like 1,200 guys somewhere stashed in their organization that it's like, okay, somebody's going to come up and pitch well for him. Clayton Kershaw is going to get a new arm or get a new elbow, or
Yep.
Dustin May is going to come out of like injured list hell basically and be ready to throw like 9 shutout innings. So there's guys coming out the wazoo there for the bullpen out of the rotation for LA. They'll be fine. So they are definitely a World Series contender.
Yeah, and we should say Otani pitched twice last week. I guess he pitched yesterday as we record this, and probably 2 days ago as you guys are watching this, if you watch it on the day it comes out. He finally recorded a strikeout. I say finally. He pitched 1 inning the first time and just didn't get a strikeout. This time he did, which feels notable. So if he's back in even like an opener role where he can give you 3 strong innings to start and then you just piece it together once every like 6 days behind him, that even makes that more scary and maybe he's out of the pen in the playoffs. I don't know what you're looking at, but the Dodgers just have a lot of pieces that I like, at least. They're just one of the best teams in baseball. There's really no sugarcoating it. And I
Yep.
would like to transition from them to maybe the most complete team in baseball. We talked about them last week. I think it's the Tigers. I think they have the top end pitching to be real dangerous, and somehow the lineup is performing really well. I would even say maybe above expectations of where we kind of thought they were going to be.
Yep.
But I think right now, Detroit and LA are the two most complete teams in baseball.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when your rotation is headlined by Tariq Skubal, one of the two Triple Crown winners from last year, and the season that he's following that up with is almost the same, if not better, than the Triple Crown year last year, it's a hard ask to say that this team won't be in a World Series on the American League side. So that rotation 1 through 5 is pretty good. They can always have a 4 or 5 that they can go find in the trade deadline and add to this. But yeah, I mean, you've got Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson. You've got a lot of good guys on offense that are maybe jumping above what we kind of project them to be. A lot of those guys are good players, but not all of them are like what the Dodgers have on paper. But they're performing just as well, if not better, than a lot of these Dodger name brand players. And then you're getting guys like Zach McKinstry and Dylan Dingler and guys supposedly lower on their roster, utility guys or backup catchers starting to perform offensively for them too and become kind of not necessarily household names, but become household names if you're a Detroit Tigers fan. It's fun to see the little David kind of pushing the Goliath here, and maybe we do see that in a World Series. But yeah, these guys are offensively jumping their projections, and they always have room on that roster to add to it as well. And a lot of these guys are young, so Detroit Tigers could be good for a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I think the future in Detroit is pretty bright. It's, I don't know, it feels like it's been a long time since they've put together like an actually, we'll call it even fairly competitive team on the
Hmm.
field. And last year they showed flashes of it, but this year is the first time that they've really come out and been dominant in quite a long time. Like even back to like the Verlander, Scherzer, Porcello, like that era of starting pitching. Uh, it's just good to see. It's good to see Detroit. It is odd saying that they're the David in the David and Goliath story when they have the best record in baseball, but it is true. It does kind of feel that
Yeah.
way. You said there's three teams to stick in the World Series contender, and I am counting two currently because of how
Yeah.
math works. Who's the third team you had in mind?
I've got the Philadelphia Phillies. So reason why I say Philadelphia is if you look at that team on paper, they have plenty of experience. A lot of these guys have been there, done that, whether it's been in Philadelphia or in other stops in their careers. Their team is maybe not as complete as the Dodgers, or it may not, and it definitely is not as complete as the Detroit Tigers. But when that team is healthy, the only question mark is that bullpen. And now they're kind of getting a three-headed monster towards the back end of that bullpen of Kerkering, of Romano, who again is still very inconsistent, and Matt Strom, who's kind of taking advantage of the kind of inconsistencies of Romano and kind of becoming that closer for them. So they'll get Jose Alvarado back at some point. Obviously, this won't affect the playoff contention part of it, or excuse me, the World Series contention part of it, because Alvarado can't pitch in the playoffs with the PED suspension. But the bullpen's typically always the bad part of the Philadelphia Phillies, and that looks like it's coming together. When healthy, they're one of the best offenses in baseball. They've, as of today, they take 2 out of 3 from the Mets in
That's
that
true.
series, so they're now leading the division again. I think it's the most complete team in the NL East, and offensively and pitching wise, they're dangerous. And obviously, Aaron Nola's got to get back to being Aaron Nola, but there's a track record there. Zach Wheeler. That team is dangerous, and I think it's the best in the NL East. And one of those three teams, really one of the top two teams in the NL East, was probably going to be another World Series contender.
I would agree. I think in a vacuum, you saying the pen is the one shaky spot is true. The bright spot, I guess, if you're Philly about that, is that the pen is also the easiest thing to kind of fix at the deadline. Everybody is selling their relievers or their starters or whatever. It just is easier to accumulate that and cheaper prospect wise generally to accumulate a reliever than it is to like grab an ace or something from somebody. So I Philly's just kind of a complete team. when everybody's clicking, that team is dangerous. The problem is getting everybody to kind of click because
Yeah.
they are still one of the best teams in baseball. I believe they have maybe the third best record in baseball. And
Yep. Third best record in baseball.
it feels like at any given time they're not doing incredibly hot, but I feel like they are winning like 2 out of 3 every series. But you never look at them and you're like, oh man, the Phillies are kind of rolling people right now, which maybe they are. You guys know your team better than we do, for sure.
Yeah. And they're
But
8-2 in their last 10, and even in my little spiel about them, like I still failed to mention Christopher Sanchez and Ranger Suarez. Like
yeah,
again, that rotation is deep, and again they can continue to add to it.
and the lineup is deep. We do love a good static lineup. Feel like that's been the same lineup for like the last 5 years since Gene
Yep.
Segura got shipped out of town and Trey Turner came to town. I feel like they've
Yep.
run out the same 9 guys, barring like some kind of injury like the Harper one right now, for years, which I do think is like a positive thing.
So a lot of these players are familiar with the culture, they're familiar with the organization, and yeah, they're kind of hot and cold. Like they're 8-2 in their last 10, and like 2 weeks ago we were talking about them being 2-8 in their last 10. So
Yep.
kind of streaky this Philadelphia Phillies team, but when they're on, they're dangerous.
They are dangerous. I'll give you another team that when they're on, they're dangerous that I would like to throw in the World Series contender just to balance it out. So we have two AL, two NL. I'm going to go the Yankees. I think when everything's clicking and the lineup is there and Judge is hitting is on and Stanton's back and healthy and everything's going right, the Yankees are a dangerous team. I think in like a 7 game series, I think they're the most interesting matchup against Detroit. Like assuming everybody on Detroit and everybody on the Yankees is on. I think that's the most interesting 7 game series. I think Detroit is still better, but I think it's fair to call New York a World Series contender because they could very easily, with their roster and their pitching, go and pop out a World Series. I mean, they made it to the World Series last year, and while the team isn't like a ton better or worse, it would be odd to say that they're not World Series contenders, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, and again, as a Braves fan, you have Max Fried kind of leading that bullpen, or excuse me, Max Fried leading that rotation now. And I already know what Max can do in a game 7. I know what happens when playoffs chances are on the line and the ability to move on to the next round of the playoffs is on the line. Max Fried is a dog, and that's the guy you want on the mound for the Yankees.
Yeah, it's not gone well for the Yankees lately. Obviously, they're 3-7 in their last 10 as we record this, and 2 of those I believe are against Baltimore, who is on the struggle bus. But I feel like you would rather be struggling now and turn it on in September than have this kind of stretch in September. So hopefully this gets it out of the way if you're a Yankee fan. Fingers crossed, at least a little bit. But we'll see. We'll see. So let's go from that segment of just overwhelming optimism to let's clear out some of the fat here. Let's go all the way down to sell the team. Who there's probably a few. I can think of 2 or 3 that we probably need to stick in the bottom.
Yep.
But I'll let you take your crack first. Who are we talking about? Who are we
Well,
mentioning?
the lowest hanging fruit is the one where Will Schaefer said, "Don't let us get hot." You're 42 games out of even, or 42 games out from even being 500. You're 29 and a half out from even the Dodgers at the first of the division. So yeah, give me the Colorado Rockies. They've got Jake Bird, they've got Hunter Goodman, they've got some pieces like Tovar and Doyle when healthy are good. There are some pitching pieces that they're going to sell off at the deadline that maybe haven't pitched well in cores that could actually do something for somebody like a Cincinnati and guys there. But yeah, this is threatening the Chicago White Sox of last year of being the worst team ever in the history of baseball. They have tripled their win total in the last 10 days. They went from 10 wins or 13 wins or whatever to 18. So almost tripled. But yeah, this team's so far out of it. Their ownership really doesn't want to invest in it. So when we say sell the team, we don't literally mean the owner needs to sell the team, but in this case, it probably does need to happen. So the Rockies, who typically have good fan support, people are there. Like they deserve a winning ball club. They deserve an owner that's going to spend a little more than just the Chris Bryant contract on a team. So yeah, I mean, Colorado Rockies not looking so good this year, and really kind of in the future for the next couple of years too.
Yeah, I'm even wearing my Colorado shirt in solidarity with you Rocky fans because it's
Oh, Orlando Arcia though.
I every time I turn on a Rockies game, I am shocked by how many people are there.
Yeah,
Just it's like the stadium is packed to just watch what's honest, if we're real honest, not a great brand of baseball happening out there right now. But you know what? I feel for you, Rockies fans.
yeah, and I think that's a really good advertisement for anybody that's trying to do the 30 parks in however many years it's going to take you to do it. Like I'm trying to do. Like when people want to go spend time at Coors Field, and the team's this bad, okay, Coors is next on my list.
Yeah, gotta take the trip out to Coors. I'll give you another ballpark that I'm excited to go to, but that the team probably still needs to be sold. It's the Pittsburgh Pirates. They have Paul Skeens, and if we're honest, that's about it. They have O'Neill Cruz hanging out in center field. What's he going to be? I don't really know. They don't really sign free agents. And, they're going to be like, oh my God, but we just signed Tommy Pham. All right, Tommy Pham's like 37, and he's going to be gone by the deadline if things go well. If Tommy Pham is still on that team by the end of the year, something's gone wrong. They did re sign Brian Reynolds at some point. They do have like young pitching, so I guess that would get you excited, but they don't even really have bats to kind of dream on, at
Yeah.
least on the current roster. Tamar Johnson is coming up, but like, what's his bat going to be in like 2 or 3 years when he's finally here? Just a bad time. I know there's sell the team merch in Pittsburgh, so it feels appropriate to stick them in the sell the team pile here. All right, do we have any more selling of the teams? Or
I do. I have one more, and that is going to be the Miami Marlins.
okay.
Kick in Miami fans while they're down, and maybe this is they took 2 out of 3 from the Braves, so now I hate them even more. But no, I don't hate the Marlins. But no, it's just what you see with Miami. They're obviously going to be selling guys like Sandy Alcantara and any other bat that they might have that isn't controllable. And even when you look at the roster and see who's controllable, it's really just like Xavier Edwards and one or two others. Like Jesus Sanchez is still there, but he's getting to the point where they need to make the decision on if he's going to stay around or not. And the Marlins consistently don't add much. Like they get kind of fleeced in trades. They don't have a lot sitting down in the minors. They do have Augustine Ramirez, a pretty solid catcher prospect. But again, how much do they really have, especially after Alcantara's gone? I know he's not performing very well. They have Yuri Perez. But again, it's going to be kind of the same cycle where they have one or two really good young pitchers, run them for 6 years during the pre-arb and arb years, and then sell them off. Similar to what we talk about Pittsburgh. And right now, Miami's kind of like Pittsburgh, where they've got really nothing else other than maybe one or two offensive guys. I mean, Kyle Stowers, good, but he's like 27, 28. Not saying that that's young because I'm 27. But if you're looking at from a roster construction and standard, it's okay, can you really build or trust a 100% a build around a 27, 28, 29-year-old and things like that. So, yeah, Miami not in a good spot either, but they are at the very minimum scrappy and going to push some of these teams like the Braves, like the Phillies, like the Mets, whenever they really need wins. So,
Yeah, I got one more team for you to stick down here, and it's the White Sox, unfortunately. They have taken a step forward, which is good, but because it would be awfully difficult to take a step back from last year. But there just really isn't a ton happening out there. I mean, Luis Robert is going to be the big trade piece from them, and he's not even playing that well. So
yeah,
now they did actually sell the team.
they
There
did.
is a new owner coming up, so hopefully things change. Hopefully some more
And,
money goes in. That seems to always be the problem with the White
well,
Sox.
it's an owner that likes spending money too, if you look at how he's done stuff with the Phoenix Suns. So Chicago, it is getting better. And see, that's why I kind of wanted to even push back and say there really should have only been 3 teams there. And I would have put the White Sox in the there's always next year. Because I think that pitching, that the young pitching that they have is really good. I think it's going to continue to develop. They have an owner that's willing to spend now, potentially. Obviously, we need to see that come off season, and we need to see players actually take contracts to go there.
Yeah.
Luis Robert is not hitting well, so Luis Robert probably even stays another year because I think it is one more year of arbitration that he has after that to maybe try to rebuild drafts or rebuild trade stock if he doesn't kind of do that between now and the trade deadline. But either way, like the Sox have some guys kind of coming up. You have a Colson Montgomery that has kind of come up and gone down. You've got some good young players that I think they finally have a core that we weren't talking about this time last year or even the year before, saying that like this team actually has a positive trajectory. So bottom three, I don't think have a very positive trajectory anytime soon, unless it's just Paul Skeens. But the White Sox, I think, have 3 or 4 arms coming up that are either there or coming up, plus some guys on offense that are pretty solid, like Kyle Teal and other ones. So
Yeah.
I think there's always next year because that young team actually has a chance of being something here within a year or two.
It's always turning around. I'm gonna clear out just some of the other fat, I guess, from the major leagues. Throw just a bunch of teams in this, and we can talk about them. I think the A's fit almost exactly what you just said in a lot of ways. They have some young bats. It's in a positive trajectory, maybe for the first time in a long time, if you're an A's fan, the few of you that are left. But, you know, I I would maybe argue sell the team for them because that just is kind of a disaster of a franchise, and I think that would fix a lot of problems. But
Yep.
for the purposes of this, there's always next year because the roster, there's bright spots. There's Jacob
Yeah.
Wilson and Nick Kurtz.
And
Uh,
we've even seen the A's this year, and I'll make it really quick, but we've seen the A's this year be really exciting and be an exciting team to watch. So
yeah,
they've got pieces there. A lot of the guys that are there, give them another year to kind of get their feet wet in Major League Baseball. And again, they might surprise people, kind of like they did to start the year and then fell off. That if they have another one of those and can kind of extend it, the AL West is not a very strong division. It's not bad, but it's not a very strong one either. So this could be a team next year that makes a run.
yeah. It's honestly still not for them, but for some of the other AL West teams, I guess it's still very much within striking distance. I am going to go out on a limb with another AL West team, the Angels. I think there's always next year's fair. They are, again, feels like a positive trajectory. It's just not there this year. They do kind of have a major league roster now, which,
Hmm.
with Mike Trout, it feels like that should be a shoe in. But if we're all honest with ourselves, that hasn't really been the case. Uh, I would put the Rangers there. I think the Rangers season, the bats just haven't come alive, and there's always that like 5% chance that that does happen, and they start reeling off some wins. But I just don't see it as a Rangers fan, and maybe I'm too hard on the Rangers because you're always harder on your own teams. But I just don't see it this year. And then I'll throw one more in there, and then you can talk about whoever. But Baltimore, I think Baltimore's season, for all intents and purposes, is pretty much done. I think they are on a really positive trajectory. It just didn't happen this year, so I think this is like a reload year. Make a couple of trades, move off like Charlie Morton as an example, like a Ryan O'Hearn, and make this the year where you trade a couple of pieces and it sets you up to win the World Series like in 2027 or 2028.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
but yeah, I think those in that tier feel fair to me at least to like trim some of the fat in the major leagues. I know those are all AL teams, so we
Yeah.
should probably throw an NL team or two in there.
Yeah, the only other NL team I'd love to kind of throw into that mix is the Washington Nationals. We've seen a lot of positive things from the Washington Nationals, and I think we can very clearly say, like, if we were to rank these on the tiers, like the Nationals should probably be at the top of this tier, kind of like where the Rangers probably should be too, because the Rangers have all the pieces, and they have a better upwards trajectory than maybe someone like the A's or the Athletics, or excuse me, the A's are the Athletics, like the Angels. So I was looking at the A of the Angels and said
Yeah, yeah.
A's. Um, but yeah, no, I mean the Nationals are a really young team. They're like James Wood is basically another Juan Soto clone, and then Juan Soto still is in the NL East. But obviously, that I think they're too far back at this point to make any run and even be questionable in the playoffs because the Braves now are back ahead of them. But yeah, I mean, Nationals have a very, very bright future. And so I think they are a team, especially in the NL East, that is going to be a thorn in a lot of teams' side this year and moving forward. And again, a lot of young pieces they can add. Some or excuse me, they can add some rotation pieces moving forward because I know some of them, like a Jake Irving and other guys, or Mitchell Parker, still need some development or need better consistency. So they could very well upgrade at some of those pieces. And then obviously they're going to get some people coming back in return whenever they do trade Kyle Finnegan again. And then Kyle Finnegan might be right back in free agency
Yep.
come the offseason, which is kind of how it seems to work. So Nationals, I think, would be the other team I throw in there. And then I feel pretty good about that tier.
Yeah, I would as well for the most part. Let's move up to playoff outs. Uh, these are the teams that they're gonna make the playoffs, I think, without question. But they likely are not true World Series contenders unless they add in like at the deadline or something happens. Uh, and these are all like one move away from being World Series contenders. The line between the top tier and the next tier is not that big,
Hmm.
but you do have to kind of separate them out. And we're splitting hairs here. I think the first team I'd like to talk about potentially is the Chicago Cubs, because they are, I mean, one of the best teams in baseball. They're one of the most exciting teams in baseball. Seiya Suzuki's going off. PCA is going off. Ian Happ is like shockingly consistent out there in Chicago. The pitching is
Dansby
kind of
Swanson's hitting
doing
a lot of home
things.
runs
Yep.
for Dansby Swanson standards. So yeah,
The pitching is kind of doing things, at least, as much as they can when the wind's blowing out 30 miles an hour to center field at Wrigley Field.
yeah.
Uh, they're like, I feel like they're one move away from being like true, like actual World Series contenders. This is the closest they've been. They added Kyle Tucker this offseason. That's been a win, I feel like. But I just can't say that they're at the same level as the Dodgers right now, as an example, or like the
Yeah.
Tigers right now, as an example. You could maybe make an argument that them and the Phillies are real close, and I think that would
Mhm.
be real compelling. But I do think the Phillies, when healthy and everybody's clicking, would win a series against the Cubs, like a long series
And I
against the
think that
Cubs.
comes down to pitching that Philadelphia has over Chicago. So that's the real question of what Chicago needs to add. They need to probably add another starting pitcher. I mean, Steele is out. Justin Steele's out for the season, so you don't have that top end arm. So they need to try to find another guy to kind of fill in that. I mean, Shota Imanaga's there, obviously. This feels like the obvious Sandy Alcantara landing spot potentially, just because it's a great contract in future too. And this team, other than the Kyle Tucker question mark they'll have this offseason, like this team's built to do this again in the future, not just a one and done. So I think they could still add some bits and pieces to the bullpen too. But yeah, I really think they're one true top end starter away from competing with the Phillies and maybe even the Dodgers. That team looks really good right now.
Yeah, they're kind of clicking on all cylinders. The other team I would throw there that again just feels like they're one piece away and it's probably a pitcher is the Mets. I think
Absolutely.
I think that I would echo everything we just said for the Cubs, but change some of the names, and then you're talking about the Mets. They added Juan Soto in the offseason, which feels again like a win, in the same way that Kyle Tucker feels like a win. There's some electric pieces out there. They can't really. I feel like the Mets are like right there. This is the best Mets team that's happened in a while. I feel pretty
Hmm.
comfortable saying that. But again, I don't know that they're even better than the Phillies in their own division. The Phillies just took
Yeah,
2 out of 3 from them
got
last
swept by the
weekend.
Braves.
Uh, and it's just, I don't know. I don't know what they're missing. I guess it's like a top end arm. I guess if you're the Mets, maybe you get into a bidding war for Sandy and see if you can sway him from Chicago or like wherever else is going to pop up. Uh, I don't know. I just feel like they're an arm away, and then the bats, like Juan Soto is clicking finally. It feels like Pete Alonso's having a great season, but they're just. I don't think they're true World Series contenders as the roster stands right now, which feels fair.
Yeah. So I've actually got two other teams, so I'll take the next two here. This might be two kind of hot takes, but I honestly think the San Francisco Giants are again a carbon copy of what we said about the Cubs and the Mets. Obviously we talked about the Rafi Devers trade, so if you want to go back and see our reactions, we've got shorts, we've got the long form content over earlier this past week. But no, you trade away two pitchers. One obviously wasn't performing very well. One's kind of little less consistent than you would like. But you get Rafael Devers, upgrade the offense there. And this offense is already pretty good right now. You're not too far off the Dodgers. You're 3.5 back. You put up a pretty good fight against them. So now, if you can go in and add a Zach Eflin or some of these other kind of top end starters that'll probably be available, you fill that rotation back up with some good guys, and this team I think can make a run at the Dodgers or the Phillies or the Cubs or the Mets. And now the other one, talking about American League teams, it is again might be a hot take. I'm going to say the Toronto Blue Jays.
Oh, okay.
So I think Toronto, their pitching is really good. A lot of these guys have a lot of good baseball cards, a lot of good history. Guys like Chris Bassett will continue to turn around. Alejandro Kirk is a really good catcher behind the plate there, both offensively and defensively. He's good at calling games. So that Toronto pitching staff is good. They need to probably add one or two bats offensively. But again, one other impact bat with Bo Bichette kind of turning it around, Vladimir Guerrero kind of being a singles merchant, but at the same time, like still doing things for the team. They've got a good piece there, and you've seen them kind of go toe to toe with the Yankees. They're a little more inconsistent, maybe again a little bit of a hot take, but pitching wins in the playoffs. And I think they're one of those teams that will jump Tampa. And it might just be a matter of time. But if they can kind of fix the offensive issues, that pitching plays in the playoffs. Jose Barrios is leading that staff, and Toronto, I think, is going to be a hard playoff out, but they'll be a playoff out.
Let's talk about Tampa for a minute. Because they're the hottest team in baseball since May 9th. They're 27-13. Which is an incredible rate. They're the best in the major leagues at scoring runs, which feels like a positive thing. And they're the third best in the league at not allowing the other team to score runs, which, when you do both of those things, you're a pretty good baseball team. I guess my question to you, do they have enough in the tank to give the Yankees a true run for their money? And then after that, do they have enough in the tank to make a legitimate World Series push? Because I think they're a playoff team, at least as they stand right now. And I think you'd be pretty happy about it if you're Tampa, which is why I do
Yeah.
think they're like here. But I don't think they're super far behind the Yankees, and they may even be better than some of these teams up here.
Yeah, Tampa's a team that had, since its inception in 1998, has had really good pitching. And they get that out of maybe guys that we don't expect to be top of the line guys. I mean, they just know how to develop pitching in Tampa. And so pitching is still something that they do very well. Shane McClanahan, I don't think's back. Am I right in saying that?
I don't believe he is, no.
Yeah, so you still don't even have Shane McClanahan, but he should be back at some point, I believe. But the guys like Taj Bradley and Zach Littell and any other name that I'm probably forgetting, they're more than capable, more than competent. in doing their job, and they're doing that right now. But I think what separates them even more is guys like Brandon Lau turning it on, or Brandon Lowe, however you say his
Yeah.
last name, because there's always Laus and Lows. He's turning it on. And if this team does fall off, he's going to be a great bat to add for one of these contending teams if the Tampa Bay Rays do fall off. But he's turning it on. Yandy Diaz is amazing in this offense. And you've got some other bats around that team that are pretty hot right now. But I do think, even though they're scoring runs at a very high clip, I don't think this is a team that is built to last come September. I think unfortunately, they are good on paper to give the Yankees a run for their money for the division right now, but they may kind of start falling off when like your dog days of summer are over once you start getting into August and September. And the Rays obviously are not going to be a team that has a very high budget. So how much do they really add, or can they really add anything? So love this Tampa Bay team, but I think they'll probably end up tailing off towards the end. So I don't think they can make a run at the Yankees. I don't think they can make a run deep in the playoffs. I'd love to be proven wrong. So Tampa, please do so. Make all my takes be absolutely crap. But I think over the summer they'll really push the Yankees. But in the long run, they'll kind of fall off and be one of those kind of middling teams that probably will finish over 500 by a game or two, but maybe don't make the playoffs. And that's just kind of my take on Tampa. But they are a very fun team to watch right now in the month of June.
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of a different take. We haven't seen Tampa. I don't think we've like this is as good as Tampa is, and it's a pretty good baseball team. So if they just
Yeah.
happen to line this up again where they go on another run like this, but it starts say the end of August, that's a pretty dangerous team. There's always like some kind of weird Tampa magic that happens. I'll cite the like late 2000s World Series teams that were going down. They just feel like they're always in it at least a little bit, and it's tough to count them out. I don't think they're true World Series contenders by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that's fair to say that they are playoff bound, and I would rank them above the Blue Jays, if I'm honest, if we were like doing a power rankings. But I do think if you're Tampa, you are kind of excited to get into the playoffs, and you're hoping that it goes better than it did a couple of years ago. All right, so some other teams maybe to throw in there. I would say uh, ditto, but for Seattle. I think if you're Seattle, there's again a lot of pretty fun pieces. Obviously, you have maybe the best player in baseball. Hot take, I don't know, Cal Raleigh. He's definitely having the best catcher season that's ever happened. I
Yep.
That's not even in question. I don't think he's got 31 home runs as we record this right now. I mean, he is that we made a video on this. He is tracking towards like 70. Like he is in that Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds range when they were putting up 65, 70 home runs right now. Will that sustain? I don't know. I saw a stat, I don't have it in front of me, but I'll throw it on the screen, of him hitting while catching is so much better than him hitting while just as a DH, which I thought was interesting. I Seattle in theory has pitching. It's the rest of the lineup that's not Cal Raleigh that scares me in a playoff series. Is that like a horrible take? I think they're making the playoffs behind some of the pitching and Cal Raleigh and some of the other pieces, but I don't think they're deep enough to make a deep run.
Yeah, I would agree. This pitching staff just needs to get healthy. And again, they've got some other good pieces offensively that have done things before. But they kind of got hot when the offense was like at an elite level early in the year, and then they've kind of cooled off as the summers kind of hit. So yeah, this Seattle team needs, I think, to add more than maybe a couple others. But I think they still might get behind the playoffs as this pitching staff, like a Logan Gilbert and stuff, get healthy and get back to the rotation.
Yeah. We'll stick in the AL West because I'm seeing the Astros, and they're a playoff out for me. if we're
Okay.
honest. I think the Astros are not stoked anymore just to make the playoffs. I think
Absolutely.
that's kind of where they're at just as an organization, which is like that's a good spot to be in because that means you're making the playoffs every year, so it's kind of expected. So I would say that playoff bound with an exclamation point is not a a proper place to put the Astros, even
Yep.
though, are the Rays better than them? There's an argument. But I also don't think, at least as the roster stands right now, with some of the bat issues, uh, that they are a true World Series contender. They have pieces, like all of these teams do. All of these teams have pieces. You have Jeremy Pena. When Jordan Alvarez comes back, that's going to be a boost. Uh, but I don't think they're deep enough to make a run like the Tigers or the Yankees are, or even really like the Rays or
Yeah.
the Jays when everybody's clicking. I think they have more pieces to add than some of the other teams here to make a true World Series run, but they're not just going to be excited to make the playoffs and get bounced in the first round like maybe some of these other teams. Which I guess you're never super stoked to get bounced in the first round, but
But if you were never expected to be there in the first place, or you haven't been in the dance in 6 or 7 years, yeah, you can at least take that with some
yeah,
solace.
you're like we're a
Compared
playoff
to
team.
Houston, that's always in the ALCS at the very minimum.
Right. And they are, I mean, we've talked about it. The AL West kind of weak behind them. There's not a whole lot else happening. It's kind of theirs to lose, if we're
Hmm.
honest right now. I Seattle feels like they're clicking at exactly the pace that they're just going to be clicking at the rest of the year. And then, are they a wild card team? Probably. Do they go on a 10-game heater and make that a for sure thing? I would think so. But I think Houston is pretty much a shoe in for the playoffs right now. But I think they're also a shoe in not to make a deep run. Again, could be wrong. They could add pieces, all that, but I just don't see World Series with their current roster.
All right. So if we're staying in this playoff bound tier, I would love to go throw the Milwaukee Brewers on this here. They're playing really well right now. They're only 3.5 back from the Chicago Cubs. Jacob Mizorowski has come up and has been throwing fireballs like crazy. I saw a stat just the other day that was the most 101 plus mile per hour pitches thrown in a major league career. And Jacob Mezorowski, I believe, is already top 6 in that list, and he's only 11 innings into his big league career. So that's insane. The pitching staff is overall good with Milwaukee. They're really turning it on now. They're 7-3 in their last 10. They've won 4 in a row. I don't think they're going to trade Freddie Peralta anymore. So this team is playing pretty well right now. And with them being ahead of St. Louis, with them being ahead of Cincinnati, they're putting themselves, at least right now, in the driver's seat to be a one team that pushes the Cubs for the NL Central, and at the very minimum, throws themselves into this NL wildcard race that is really, really thick at the moment, and probably will be thick up until the final day in September, or early October, whenever the
Yeah.
season officially ends. So Milwaukee, I think, is definitely one of those teams that gets their way in somehow. And I think just overall roster wise, they look better than the Cardinals. They look better than the Reds. And they'll be the team that wins out from that.
Yeah, here's the one team that they're going to have to worry about, I think. I think it's these two teams for that last spot. It's them and San Diego.
Yeah.
Because San Diego just seems to always be around. The NL West is basically the exact opposite of the AL West, where that division is incredibly deep. There is 3 teams there that you're like, those guys, it would suck to run into them in the playoffs, where in the West, really it's maybe 2 and really maybe just 1. The Padres, I mean, they have all the names that we've all heard about, and we've talked about Tatis, and we've talked about Machado, and Cronenworth is here, and the pitching's all right, and Jackson Merrill is around, and one of the best young center fielders in the league. The, them and the Brewers, to me, it's going to be a dogfight to the last day, to the last series, to see who gets that last spot, because I do think whoever doesn't win the East the Mets or the Phillies is going to be the top wild card, potentially. I think the Giants are probably going to be the second wild card if things don't just collapse horribly. And that leaves one more wild card team, and it's maybe the Brewers or the
Padres.
Padres. Like those are the two to me that jump out. You could make an argument, I guess, that like the Cardinals would be in that. They're only a game out right now. Do the Reds get hot? I kind of don't think so, but maybe. But I think those are the two teams that you're looking at for that last playoff spot realistically that I think can like hold this for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and the Padres have pitching just similar to Milwaukee, and Dylan Cease isn't even performing very well right now. And again, he's got a track record that says he'll turn it around at some point. So when he does, that makes that Padre team even more dangerous.
Yep.
And
Uh
then don't throw to Tatis in the playoffs too, or
yeah,
in a or in any moment of clutch. Like he's still clutch.
yeah, one of the most clutch players in the league. I see two more. There's always next year's that I just want to get out of the way.
Okay.
I would throw the Twins in that. Remember when they were the hottest team in baseball? We talked about it. They had won like 13 in a row. They're 1-9 in their last 10. It's very possible because of just how the Twins operate that they're going to turn around and be one of the best teams in baseball for the next like 2 weeks, and then suddenly they're playoff bound.
Yeah.
But right now things are not looking great. Buxton's had one hell of a week. Spoiler alert. Stay tuned for that. That's how you keep the people watching, Justin. Professional podcaster
Absolutely.
right there. Uh, I don't know. I don't see it this year. I don't really think they're playoff bound. I think they are in a semi-positive trajectory like some of the other teams on this list. It just hasn't quite clicked for them all the way. And then I would throw Kansas City on this list. That's not saying
Mhm.
Kansas City is totally out of it, but I do think they have a lot of stuff that they have to get right if they even want to think about are we playoff bound? Because it just
Yeah.
hasn't gone super well for them this season. Really, after April, because I remember we were talking about the AL Central was somehow kind of loaded, and we were like, eventually that's going to balance out. Well, it's balanced out, and
Yeah.
so the Royals have taken a step back, like we kind of thought, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Those are the two more I just wanted to throw in there.
Well, while we're still throwing teams in that tier, I do think there's still two more obvious teams we could throw in there, and that probably completes this list. And I'm going to start off with the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Okay.
So again, like we've seen the Arizona Diamondbacks get hot. They're still very young. They're almost just as young as they were when they made that World Series run 2 years ago and lost to the Rangers. But that NL West is just stacked and loaded, and I think at this point they're too far behind. They're 8 games back from the Dodgers, 3 from the Padres, and obviously some in between, somewhere in between there, 5.5 I think between San Francisco. But again, we talked about what St. Louis, we will talk about what St. Louis is doing. We've talked about what Milwaukee's doing, obviously where the Padres will be, and they're fighting for that kind of one final spot. I think at this point, the Arizona Diamondbacks have a good enough rotation, or excuse me, they have a good enough core that's young enough, and they're not losing very much. I mean, it's like Josh Naylor and maybe Eugenio Suarez as potential free agents. So, I mean, they can bring those guys back. Maybe they don't, but either way, they still have a really good core around them, and they'll get other guys back. Like they'll get or Corbin Burns is there, right?
Corbin Burns is out for the year.
Well,
His elbow
yes, but
blew
he's
up.
in Arizona, right?
Yeah, he is in Arizona.
Okay, yeah, yeah. They'll get Corbin Burns back next year. That'll be where you have to cut there.
Yeah.
They'll get Corbin Burns back next year. And again, this just looks like injuries and too much inconsistency in a division that's so good, and the wild card is so tough that I don't think Arizona is even in a spot now to even make a run. And then the other team I'd throw in that is the Cincinnati Reds. Cincinnati, again, you've got three teams ahead of you that I think are better than you. You're still young. You're still overall exciting. I know I was kind of seemed like an Ellie De La Cruz hater last episode where I didn't feel like Ellie was as electric as Ellie has been in the past, and then kind of proves me wrong a couple days later and is kind of back to being electric and even pukes on the field due to heat hydration or dehydration in the heat. So
Yeah.
I mean, again, Cincinnati's a fun team to watch. They've got pieces. They don't really have to sell much. They don't really have to add much either. That rotation's nice, but I think St. Louis is a better team than them, and obviously, I think Milwaukee's got a lot better roster than them as well. So they have a very nice positive upward trajectory, but I think it's always next year for them.
Yeah, I think I would. I still think that there's like a shot that with their current roster they go on a heater. The problem with the Reds right now, I'm looking at the wild card standings to get to Milwaukee. They have to jump the Cardinals and the Padres and the Brewers,
Yeah,
uh, and that's just going to be a tough task. I mean, they can pitch. It just feels like they haven't clicked as a unit at this point. I don't know. It just feels like all the pieces, when you look at it, it should be better than what it currently is, which they're not a bad baseball team. They're 2 games over 500. They're kind of clicking along pretty well. This is definitely a step in the right direction from last year. There's hope for the future. But at the same time, you look and you're like, man, the if you just feel like they should be better than they are looking
yeah.
at it, and that's just a tough spot to be. But I guess that does give you legitimate hope for the future of like, all right, if you're projecting forward next year or in 2 years, you're in a great spot potentially to jump the Brewers. But I just don't know that's going to happen this year. I do think if they add a bat, suddenly everything's back on. I think
Yeah.
suddenly they go from here to being a playoff bound question mark team, which we'll get to in a second.
Eugenio Suarez back.
Maybe it's a thought. So here's a thought that I had that I would love your opinion on. If the Diamondbacks reel off, let's say the Diamondbacks in their next 10 reel off like an 8-2, and they're right back in it, right? They're not selling. Like
Absolutely.
you're at a minimum, you're holding, and potentially you're adding a piece, probably a pitcher, which who isn't adding a pitcher. But if you don't, I mean, it's they have all the pieces that you would want to add if you're a
Yeah.
team. Like you're like, I need a pitcher, give me Zach Gallen, or I need a righty bat, give me Suarez. And you can do that if you're the Diamondbacks and not give away some of the core, like a Corbin Carroll and some of the other guys there. I think, or like they could trade away Naylor, and I don't think anyone would bat an eye if it's not
Yeah.
going well. It's they're in a real interesting spot where I think if you're the rest of the league, you're kind of rooting against Arizona right now.
Mhm.
But if you're
Because everybody
Arizona,
wants a piece from them.
right, they are the team that you want to buy from, in my opinion. They
Yep.
are the best equipped, besides maybe the Rangers selling off some of their starting pitching if it just doesn't go well, for people to add major league talent. Because Zach Gallen's a guy that he could make a start in a playoff game and give you 6 innings. Say if you're the Yankees or the Blue
Yep.
Jays or even the Astros. And that's like a difference maker arm that you could add. Or Suarez could give you 10 home runs down the stretch if you're, say, the Cubs or the Astros. Again, I hate to keep going to them. But like that is those are two difference maker MLB ready. You kind of know what you're getting, guys that you don't necessarily have out of the rest of these to buy.
Mhm. Yeah. And while we're talking about it, Suarez to the Phillies also doesn't make a bad doesn't make bad sense either.
Yeah, maybe you slide. Maybe that's the end of Bohm. Maybe you just one for one them. Be like, we're kind of over it. If you're the Phillies,
And Bohm does kind of fit the kind of younger core that Arizona has. So maybe that fresh start. Trade
yeah,
deadline episode. Hey, it's
yeah,
coming.
it's coming. It's coming. We're going to disagree on this one, but I think we're at the point of the episode where we can talk about it. I would have the Braves, and there's always next year. They have the team, they have the roster. They, in my opinion, have way too many teams to try to jump at this point
Yeah.
to get into that last wild card spot. I feel the same way about them that I do Baltimore. I think it didn't go well this year. I think they should retool. I know you have a different take on that. I kind of think, just like Baltimore, this is the year to like trade an Ozuna and get some prospects and make this the year where you're like, hey, that didn't go well. But in 2027 or 2028, when you win another World Series, you look back and you're like, okay, that trade sparked this, or we added that piece. That's kind of where I have them in my mind, but I know you have a different take on it. At least you did last week.
Yeah. So, and again, my personal take on it is probably more similar to yours. It's just I have been a Braves fan my entire life, and I know this organization, and I know this regime, and what they're trying to do. They've done this too many times where they've been so far out of it, even at this part in a season, and made a run. But you look at the runs that they've made to even get back to 89 wins or 92 wins when they've made the playoffs as a wild card and ran off and did what they did. Like there's too many teams to jump, and 92 wins probably doesn't even put you in the playoffs in the National League this year, at least if we look at pace.
Yeah.
So even if the Braves do go back on some miraculous, amazing run that I would love to be in the stands for, I just, like you said, there's too many teams to jump. And they want to continue to put butts in seats and try to get 41,000 night in, night out, especially during the summer, and trading a Marcell Ozuna and trading a couple other pieces like that would not probably be that way, especially with how Braves Twitter is right now. But what I will say is I'm more on the side of you of saying they probably are, and there's an always next year. Because again, like you get the better draft pick, you get maybe thrown into the lottery now, or maybe you get another impact pitcher because it seems like we always love to be drafting American pitchers from the draft and then just go sign international free agents at position players. They've added some youth that. And so, like again, get one or two pieces, make this better. I know they won't do that, but now losing Chris Sale with the broken rib for what I'm hearing is maybe an extended period of time. You still have Spencer Schwellenbach. You still have Spencer Strider. That Strider kind of is starting to turn it around, be more like his normal self, not necessarily back to Strider, but closer. Spencer Schwellenbach still really good. Grant Holmes quietly being very, very good. Bryce Elder being inconsistent, but better than what he has in the past. They need another pitcher. They need to work on the back end of the bullpen. Offense needs to be more consistent. But again, like I know this team will try to buy because they have the pieces to jump probably every single one of those National League teams if they get hot, and they've got the ability to. So I still believe that's what they'll do. Is that what they should do? Probably not. But I know what they will do. So I expect Charlie Morton to be added at the deadline, and Adam Duvall to be signed out of free agency, and just bring back the old guys. Jason Hayward just got DFA'd, so maybe Jason Hayward comes back. 98-year-old Craig Kimbrell gets DFA'd by the Rangers, comes back for one more like one inning, gets DFA'd again type thing. It's what's happening as an Atlanta Braves fan, but I would put them in playoff bound question mark because I think that potential to jump a lot of these teams is still there. But then you lose out of three to the Marlins, and now you've got Chris Sale out for maybe an extended period of time. I think it does put a damper into that chance pretty heavily.
Yeah. Let's move on here to the playoff bound question marks. I guess we have three teams left, so I guess all of these are going there,
Yep.
which feels fair. Boston, right on the cusp, in my opinion. They haven't made
Yep.
the playoffs in a minute. They are shockingly close to 500 aggregate over the last like 3 years. We talk about it almost every week. Now they've offloaded Devers. Are they a better roster? It's hard to say that after moving what's probably a top 10 pure hitter in baseball. But I guess it opens up some flexibility. They just sent down Christian Campbell, I think. Roman
Hmm.
Anthony, they're hoping finds it. I don't they're right on the cusp again. Like I could very easily see them winning 5 games in a row at some point, and they jump a team like the Mariners, and then they're in the dance as like the last team in, or
Hmm.
like a Toronto as the last team in. It's I don't know. I think they're close, but it would be stupid to call them a for sure shot at the playoffs, but I do think there is a higher chance than most of the teams down here that they're able to squeak in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that offense on paper obviously lost Rafi Devers and lost a lot with losing Rafi. But I mean, they're still on paper okay, but then that pitching is just 10 times better than what their offense is. And then you've added to it with the Rafi Devers trade again with two guys, one down in the minors and one on the injured list that still haven't performed amazingly this year. But anybody that is capable to join that bullpen or to join that rotation and maybe even be out of the pen and help is always going to help guys like Garrett Crochet. And if that team can't sneak in the playoffs, Garrett Crochet is dangerous in the playoffs.
That's true. The other team here to talk about, Cleveland. They currently have the last spot in the wild card, though they are tied with the Mariners as we record this. Uh, I mean, they have bats. They have Jose Ramirez, and anytime you have a healthy Jose Ramirez in your lineup, I'm going to say that you have a shot at
Yep.
doing things. They're not the best team in the world, and they could very easily not make the playoffs. I think they're a bigger question mark than Seattle down the
Yep.
stretch. I just think Seattle is a little bit more of a complete team. But again,
Hmm.
neither one of these I don't think is making a playoff, like a true World Series push. I think this is more of a conversation of who's getting the last spot or the last 2 spots in the wild card. And then St. Louis is our last team. This was another team that went on a heater at some point, like in May, and they've kind of fallen back to earth, but they're only a game out. They still have to jump San Diego and Milwaukee to get in, but they're only a game out. The pieces are kind of there. They're like, what, 8 games over 500, if I'm doing that math right? 6 games over
Yep.
500, I think, actually doing that math right. Um, it's a good team out in St. Louis. I think they're overperforming a little bit, and I
Yep.
keep waiting for them to fall back to earth even more than they have lately. But it's a team that if they add, I mean, we could talk about Eugenio Suarez here as like a DH, maybe a first base option, where if they add some power and maybe an arm, because every team needs an arm, maybe some help out of the bullpen, that's a dangerous team to run into in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that could again be Josh Naylor when we talk about first baseman ads and things. I mean, Alec Burleson's still there, and he's kind of mashing as of late. He can obviously play first. I'm not 100% familiar with where he's playing every day in that lineup, but I mean, this team is dangerous to run into in the playoffs. I mean, they've got a lot of young pieces, and I believe Jordan Walker's down in the minors, kind of marinating, and he could very
Yep.
well be another young talent to kind of come back up and mash for them again and help propel them. So St. Louis definitely has some issues, or not some issues, definitely has some potential here. But again, it's just who do they have to beat out, and that list is pretty lengthy of who they have to beat out for a spot, especially if an Atlanta team gets really, really hot at some point. If San Diego and Milwaukee keep doing what they got to do. And then circling back around to Cleveland, it's kind of the same thing. I kind of think this is where Josh Naylor goes back to.
Yep.
And that helps out that offense a ton as well. Carlos Santana moves back to a DH only type role, and then I just don't trust their pitching enough more than like what a Seattle has or even a Tampa or Toronto. So when you don't have the pitching per se, like it's not bad, but you don't you when you stack it up to Toronto, Tampa, Seattle, it's nowhere near what it needs to be. So that's going to be a team that you're going to need to continue to add some pitching to.
Yeah. So that's our tier list. I guess let us know what we missed. Did we horribly miss the mark on like the Twins or the Brewers or the Padres or anybody? Did we mess up your favorite team? Maybe. But you guys are going to have to let us know that in the comments section. We have one more thing to do here quickly. Players of the week. Oh, I need to change the bottom line. Ignore the bottom line if you're watching this. It'll change momentarily. But players of the week. Justin, why don't you go first with the NL?
Yes, well, we've been talking about Eugenio Suarez being traded, so I'm going to go ahead and give him as my National League Player of the Week in terms of offensive players. Eugenio Suarez, he was slashing 440, 464, and 1,000 since June 16th, which is obviously this kind of last week as of recording. A 290 WRC plus with a 438 BABIP. So again, he's maybe one base hit luckier than what he is actually performing on the field. So again, it's not just luck. He's smashing the ball all over the field. 4 homers, 10 RBIs, and then 5 runs scored in 28 plate appearances in that time. The dude's on a tear right now in the National League and really putting the Arizona Diamondbacks at least in the questionable spot that we just talked about him in to say, hey, can they get hot enough to make a playoffs? Or if they're not, he's going to be one of the more impact bats on the market because of how he's slashing right now and how he's just mashing the ball all over. Then on the pitching side, I know this seems to be a broken record, but it won't be a broken record anymore because he's on the injured list. But my National League Pitcher of the Week is Chris Sale. In one start in this kind of 7-day time frame, he pretty much pitched a complete game shutout. Couldn't get the final out, so he pitched 8 2/3 innings. Had less Ks than we're typically used to seeing out of Chris Sale, but still had 7. A 208 BABIP, so again, guys are not hitting base hits, whereas fielders are kind of bailing him out. And his ground out percentage was significantly higher. I think it was around high 50s%. So really pitching to contact, really efficient. But again, when you're 1 out away from a complete game shutout, I think that's something that needs to be recognized. And then obviously the play that ended up breaking his rib, stealing a base hit from Juan Soto, laid out for it. Unfortunately, broke his rib, and now he's going to be out for a little bit and puts the Braves' playoff chances even more question. But again, just that performance alone gives you National League Pitcher of the Week, even though there were a couple other guys that I really wanted to say. But when you're 1 out away from a complete game shutout, yeah, I think that still gives you the nod this week.
Yeah, that's always an impressive thing to either get the complete game or to become an out away. I'm gonna go. We'll start, I guess, with our hitter of the week in the American League. You know who's having a gnarly week this week? It's my man Cal Raleigh. We're making an audible, maybe. Who's to say? 5 home runs, 12 RBIs. He's got 2 stolen bags. But you know who's been just slightly better is Byron Buxton. People let some people know. He's got 6 home runs this week. All of them somehow solo home runs because he has 6 RBIs. He only has 1 stolen base, so Cal Raleigh faster than Byron Buxton confirmed. But Buxton, we've talked about it before. He's finally putting together that healthy season that we've always kind of hoped that he would. I mean, the numbers are stacking up. He's showing flashes of being an incredibly good baseball player, which we've always kind of hoped for, I think, from him. He had a 353 WRC plus this week, which is wild. Cal Raleigh, for reference, had a 343. Buxton is just kind of piecing it together in a way that he really hasn't in the rest of his career. He had that 1 year early we've talked about before, but he's just seeing it well right now on a Twins team that needs it because they are struggling. So him doing all of that and the Twins only winning 1 of their last 10 is very unfortunate, if we're honest. And who knows, maybe they would have lost all 10 without Buxton. Our pitcher of the week, staying in the AL Central, is going to be Seth Lugo. My man is a human rain delay when it comes to his wind-up motion, but he is a very effective rain delay, I guess, because he only allowed 2 earned runs in 12 and a third innings pitched. That's good enough for a 1.46 ERA. 16 strikeouts was 3rd in the AL this last week. Only the 1 walk, and he gets our nod for the AL Pitcher of the Week. So, I guess that's pretty much going to be it. That's a good hour plus, I guess, by the time we're done editing this. So, Justin, give them a player to comment if they made it to the end of the video. We'll pin them.
Yeah, if you made it to the end of this podcast episode of Baseball Adjacent, in staying on brand with the suspensions that have happened this week in baseball, comment Dennis Santana for slapping the fan, and make sure you go slap that like button, just like Dennis Santana slapped the fan, and you'll be good and see more of these Baseball Adjacent episodes.
Yeah, maybe slap the follow button if you're on Instagram, or subscribe if you're on YouTube, or yeah, go hit up Justin's TikTok. Justin has a lot of football content coming out on his TikTok in the next, like, what, 6 months, 2 months,
6 weeks. 6 weeks.
6
Do
weeks.
3 videos. Yeah, 3 videos a day.
3
Or 3
videos a
videos a
day
week.
is wild. 3 videos a week. There we go.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch y'all in the next one. Take it easy.